If you're a truck driver in America, listen to me very carefully because something changed in April and too many drivers still don't realize how serious it is. This is not one of those rumors floating around truck stop parking lots. This is not one more social media scare post. This is real roadside enforcement, real out-of-service risk, real citations, real carrier heat, and real money leaving drivers and fleets fast. Drivers are getting caught off guard at way stations, during inspections, and in roadside stops because they think nothing has changed. They think their old routine is good enough, and then the inspector starts digging. And once that inspection starts, what looked like a normal run can turn into a very expensive day. What changed is bigger than one single headline. In April 2026, CVSA's 2026 out-of-service criteria went into effect. Then on April 19th, FMCSA's English language roadside enforcement policy became effective. That matters because it adds fresh pressure to a system that was already watching logs, ELD activity, vehicle condition, cargo securement, license status, endorsements, restrictions, and driver qualification. So when drivers say, "What's the new law?" the real answer is this. April 2026 tightened the enforcement climate. The road didn't suddenly get safer because rules got softer. It got tougher because inspectors now have sharper tools, updated criteria, and less patience for sloppy compliance. And that is where a lot of drivers are getting burned. They hear new law and assume it only affects somebody else. Hazmat guys, oversized guys, new CDL holders, foreign drivers, big fleets, not me. But that's not how this plays out on the shoulder or at the scale. Because when enforcement tightens, the whole inspection environment changes. The officer looking at your truck is not only checking whether one thing is wrong, they are checking whether multiple small problems line up into one big problem. One bad edit in the log, one mismatch in the paperwork, one brake issue, one tire, one tie down, one endorsement issue, one answer that raises doubt. And the moment doubt enters the inspection, your simple stop turns into a full inspection mood. That's why drivers need to stop thinking in terms of, "Am I legal enough?" and start thinking in terms of, "Can I survive an inspection right now?" Because FMCSA makes clear that enforcement cases can begin after roadside inspections, and the roadside inspection report itself does not disappear when you pull away. If a vehicle is declared out of service, the defects have to be corrected before that truck operates again. Drivers who receive a roadside inspection report have to get it to the carrier within 24 hours, and the carrier has to sign and return the completed report within 15 days verifying corrections. That means one bad stop doesn't just cost a few minutes. It follows the truck, the driver, and the carrier. Now let's talk hours of service, because this is where a lot of pressure starts. Drivers are tired, freight is late, dispatch is pushing, parking is impossible, and the temptation is always there to clean up the record later. But once your record of duty status starts looking false, incomplete, or impossible to explain, you are in dangerous territory. FMCSA's ELD rule still applies to most carriers and drivers who have to keep records of duty status in interstate commerce, and the whole point is to standardize and verify what happened behind the wheel. The government does not look at this as harmless logbook cleanup. They look at it as a safety issue tied directly to fatigue and accountability. And here is the part that drivers need to hear twice. Legitimate corrections are one thing. False records and tampering are another. Under the 2026 CVSA out-of-service criteria, changes were made around false records of duty status and tampering with electronic logging devices. A new out-of-service condition was added for situations where the driver or carrier tampers with an ELD in a way that makes it impossible to determine what events actually occurred. Read that again. If the inspector cannot reconstruct what really happened, you can be shut down. That is not theory. That is now baked into the 2026 out-of-service framework. So picture the inspection mindset. The officer doesn't need you to confess. They need inconsistency. The truck says one thing, the ELD says another. The shipping timeline says something else. Fuel receipts don't line up. Yard moves look suspicious. Personal conveyance looks abused. Unidentified driving time was handled badly. Or, edits appear after the fact in a way that smells wrong. That's when a normal log check becomes a credibility check. And once the inspector thinks the log cannot be trusted, everything else on that truck gets a harder look. Next, brakes. Because drivers love to say, "It was just one brake chamber," or "It's still stopping fine." right up until the sticker lands and the truck is parked. FMCSA's own common violations material highlights brake issues again and again, and the out-of-service criteria continue to focus on defective brakes. CVSA's 2026 changes even moved certain brake system conditions into the 20% defective brakes criterion section. That means brake defects are not some little maintenance annoyance. They are one of the fastest ways to get turned from moving freight to sitting still and explaining yourself. And don't forget the rest of the walk-around killers: tire tread, hose chafing, kinked tubing, lighting defects, missing warning devices, expired or missing inspection documentation, failure to correct previously noted defects. FMCSA's inspection guidance is brutally simple on this point. Before operating, the driver must inspect the vehicle and be satisfied it is in safe operating condition. If the last inspection noted deficiencies, the driver must review and acknowledge that repairs were made. In other words, "I didn't know" is not the shield some drivers think it is. Then comes cargo securement. And this one gets people because the load looks fine until the inspector starts counting what actually holds it in place. FMCSA's cargo securement rules are designed to prevent cargo from shifting on or within the vehicle or falling from it. The point is accident prevention, not visual comfort. So if you're hauling and your securement is damaged, insufficient, loose, mismatched to the commodity, or poorly distributed, the inspector is not judging your confidence. They are judging whether that load can move, slide, tip, bounce, or break free. And in 2026, CVSA also updated parts of the cargo securement criteria, including logs and tie-down defects. Now let's get into licensing and documentation, because this is another area where April 2026 added heat. CVSA's 2026 changes specifically amended sections on operator licenses, CDL endorsements, and restrictions to separate and clarify violation codes. FMCSA also put new attention on who is qualified to operate and under what credentials, and its April 19 roadside enforcement policy says that, outside the narrow border zone exception, violations of the English language proficiency requirement can be marked out of service. So if your license class, endorsement, restriction, medical qualification, identification, or qualification status does not match the operation you're performing, or if you cannot satisfy a roadside English language assessment where required, this is not a paperwork shrug anymore. It can become an operational stop. And this is why drivers are saying it feels like enforcement is everywhere right now, because it is not just about getting pulled over for speeding. FMCSA's safety planner says carriers may be stopped by federal, state, or other law enforcement officials for a variety of reasons, most often common traffic violations. Add weigh stations, roadside blitzes, inspection details, and random scrutiny when something about the truck looks off, and the message is clear. If your paperwork, your truck, and your story are not tight, you are exposed. Let me give you a scenario that is playing out all over this country. A driver leaves before daylight, coffee in hand, load looks decent, driver feels confident. He's done this route 100 times. His ELD has a couple edits from the last 2 days, but nothing he thinks is a big deal. One trailer brake has been acting lazy, but the truck still pulls. One strap on the load was replaced and not rechecked after the first 100 miles. He rolls toward the scale house, thinking about the delivery window, not about enforcement. Then the bypass doesn't light up. He gets the signal to pull in. He rolls onto the pad. Everything still feels routine. Maybe it's just paperwork. Maybe they'll check the lights and send him on. But then the officer asks for logs. The timeline raises a question, then another. Fuel stop doesn't line up cleanly. There's an edit that needs explaining. The officer walks the trailer and notices a securement issue that looked minor from the cab. Then comes the brake check. Then the paperwork review. Now the driver isn't dealing with one stop. He's dealing with a chain reaction, the kind that turns confidence into silence fast. The log issue doesn't stand alone anymore. The brake issue doesn't stand alone anymore. The tie-down doesn't stand alone anymore. The inspector is now seeing a pattern, and patterns are what kill runs. Maybe the officer decides the record of duty status cannot be trusted. Maybe a defect tips the brake system over the line. Maybe the securement issue is enough to demand correction before movement. Maybe the license or endorsement doesn't match the exact operation. Maybe the driver struggles with the roadside English language assessment. Suddenly the truck is placed out of service, citations start stacking, dispatch is panicking, the customer is waiting, and the load is no longer your biggest problem. That is the nightmare drivers need to understand. Out of service is not just embarrassment. It means you are not moving. Your clock is blown. Your delivery is blown. Your relationship with dispatch is damaged. Your carrier now has a compliance headache. A tow or repair may be needed. Another driver may have to recover the load. A customer may start asking why this keeps happening, and once safety violations get attached to your name or your company's file, they do not disappear just because you had a bad morning. And this is exactly why the phrase, "big fines start now," hits so hard, even if the real damage is bigger than the ticket itself. Yes, monetary penalties matter. Yes, citations and civil penalties can hurt. But the hidden cost is often worse. Missed loads, forced downtime, lost revenue for the day, repair bills, reinspection hassle, dispatch distrust, customer complaints, a carrier deciding you've become more trouble than you're worth. For owner-operators, one bad inspection can burn through the profit from multiple runs. For company drivers, one bad inspection can get your phone real quiet real fast. The worst part is how often it starts with something drivers call small. A log not current, a missing record, a wrong endorsement, an expired medical document, a pre-trip done with the eyes but not the hands, a tire that still had a little life, a brake you plan to fix next week, a securement check you skipped because you were racing the appointment time, a warning light you ignored because it cleared itself. In trucking, the word small has ended a lot of good weeks. So what do drivers need to do right now? First, treat your ELD like evidence, not a gadget. Review your logs every day. Make sure the status changes, location history, mileage, and edits make sense and can be explained. If something was corrected, be ready to explain why it was corrected. If unidentified driving time exists, deal with it the right way. If your carrier has sloppy ELD habits, stop assuming that becomes your protection. When the officer asks questions, you are the one standing there. Second, get violent about pre-trip and post-trip discipline. Not lazy, not rushed, violent. Put your hands on the equipment. Look at brakes, hoses, tires, lights, couplers, warning devices, and whatever was written up on the last report. FMCSA says drivers must inspect the vehicle and be satisfied it is in safe operating condition before operating. That means you cannot outsource your survival entirely to the shop or to habit. If it would embarrass you in front of an inspector, fix it before the key turns. Third, check your load like the inspector is already watching. Not from 20 feet away, up close. Are the tie-downs damaged? Is the working load limit enough? Has the commodity shifted? Is the securement appropriate for what you're hauling? Did anything loosen after the first stretch of road? FMCSA's cargo securement rules exist specifically to stop cargo from shifting or falling, and roadside officers know that a load can look decent and still be dangerously wrong. Fourth, verify your license, medical qualification, endorsements, restrictions, and driver file status before the road verifies it for you. If you haul tank, doubles, hazmat, passengers, or anything requiring a specific endorsement, do not assume the office has it right. Read your own CDL. Read your own documents. Know your own operation. Because when your paperwork and your actual work do not match, roadside is where the truth shows up. Fifth, understand that roadside communication is now part of compliance, not an afterthought. FMCSA's April 16 policy made English language roadside enforcement active, and outside the specific border zone exception, violations under that policy can be marked out of service. So if a driver is required to meet that standard, this cannot be brushed off as politics, rumor, or online drama. It is now an enforcement issue with roadside consequences. And let me say something directly to carriers and dispatchers too, because drivers are not the only ones exposed here. If you push drivers to make it work, if you tolerate dirty logs, if you postpone repairs, if you load freight like securement is optional, if you assume roadside is just bad luck, you are feeding the exact inspection patterns that get trucks shut down. FMCSA states that enforcement cases can be initiated following roadside inspections. So, when that inspection blows up, it is not just the driver standing in the fire, it reaches the carrier too. America's truck drivers need to understand this clearly. April 2026 changed the feel of the road. New out-of-service criteria started April 1st. New English language roadside enforcement took effect April 16. Existing HOS, ELD, brake, cargo securement, inspection, and qualification rules never went away. And when all of that lands on one stop, one inspection, one scale, one shoulder, one officer, one bad day, it can absolutely wreck your run. This is already happening. Not next year, not maybe, not if Washington eventually decides to get serious. It is happening now. Drivers are getting checked now. Trucks are getting flagged now. Out-of-service orders are happening now. Costly mistakes are being exposed now. So do not wait for the scale house. Do not wait for the blue lights. Do not wait for the inspection sticker. And do not wait for your carrier to tell you there's a problem after the problem has already taken your day apart. One mistake can end your run. One bad inspection can cost you more than a week of complaining ever will. One lazy pre-trip can turn into a long call home. So tighten your logs, tighten your load, tighten your truck, tighten your paperwork, tighten everything. And if you're a driver watching this, subscribe right now, drop your state in the comments, and share this with another driver before a roadside inspection teaches them the hard way.